Welcome, everybody. Good to see you here. Thank you for persevering with the lifts. That might have been a little bit slow in getting you here, but I hope that you're going to find the event interesting, rewarding and inspiring. We're really lucky to have quite an intimate group here today in person, but we've also got viewers online, so welcome to our online viewers as well, and we'll be sharing this out in other ways afterwards as well. So please get your questions ready. We're really fortunate to have an amazing panel here today, and they'd love to hear from you. So what we'll be doing is going through the event, and at the end we'll have some microphones to go through and get some of your questions. So first of all, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners. QUT acknowledges the Turrbal and Yagara people as the First Nations owners of the lands where QUT now stands. We pay our respects to their elders, laws, customs and creation spirits. We recognise that these lands have always been places of teaching, research and learning. QUT acknowledges the important role Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play within the QUT community. So my name is Karen Taylor-Brown and I'll be your host today. I am the co-founder and CEO of careerswithstem.com, which is a STEM careers inspiration hub. It's got all sorts of things like career quizzes, articles, profiles that you can search through. And we've been working with QUT on various STEM activities for the last 10 years. So I'm really happy to be here today. Chances are that you're here today because you've got an interest in sustainability and also an interest in science and technology. You're probably interested in building a career that can help our environment, whether it's to combat climate change, preserve our reefs, mitigate disasters, or secure our food future. There are many ways that you can combine your sustainable planet goals with science, maths, and tech right here at QUT. And today we're going to hear from some amazing STEM experts who are doing just that. But first, I want to talk to you about a career formula that we use at Careers with STEM. We call it STEM+X, where STEM is your foundation, but X is where the magic happens. So X is your passion, your interest, or your goals. So did you know you can combine a STEM foundation with just about anything, and that STEM jobs are growing at twice as fast as any other job? So say you're into fashion, you might want to combine technology, combine fashion with technology to create an immersive beauty experience online. Or you're a sports fanatic. We need mathematicians and scientists to make sure that athletes perform at their best and prevent injuries. Can't decide whether to be a game developer or an educator? Why not do both? You can create gaming worlds that teach First Nations culture and language. And there are so many cool examples of how you can combine STEM+X on the careerswithstem.com website. So today we're on campus during Sustainability Week and just at the close of National Science Week. So the X we're going to focus on today is sustainability. And we have an incredible panel of people who have combined a foundation in STEM with studies with sustainability to make the world a better place. You'll meet Dr. Erin Evans, who is the CEO of Life Sciences Queensland, and her STEM+X formula can be described as science plus health plus climate plus business. Her organisation, Life Sciences Queensland, champions Queensland's biotechnology sector in fields that are critical to human health, sustainable development and economic prosperity, spanning medical devices, diagnostics, medicines, agriculture, marine biotech, animal health and bioenergy. Are you into sustainable food? You might be interested in the career journey and research of Professor Sagadevan Mundree, who is a world-leading expert in agricultural biotechnology. He leads research and teams focused on making, let me just get their names up here, focused on making crops that are more resilient to environmental stresses such as drought and salinity. He also looks at how you can grow crops that deliver more nutritious products. Professor Mundree is currently the acting head of school for biology and environmental sciences at QUT. If you're passionate about conserving our reef systems, you'll be keen to hear from Dr. Brett Lewis, who is a postdoctoral research fellow at QUT's School of Earth and Atmospheric Science. Brett explores coral biology through high-resolution 2D and 3D microscopy, videography, and model development. He's currently investigating the use of sustainable low-impact glues to stabilise damaged reefs and rubble to help in this vital ecosystem. His videos have been featured on the BBC and have also featured in dozens of documentaries and won multiple international awards. And if you want a career in renewable energy, the fastest growing energy sector, get your questions ready for Kate Watson. Kate is a recent QUT graduate who now works at Power Systems Consultants, or PSC. Kate recently graduated from QUT with a double degree in environmental science and electrical engineering. She's now a power systems engineer where she runs simulations to test how a plant responds to different situations within the electricity grid. And the main parts of her role include Python programming, data analysis, and power systems analysis. Kate also completed 4 internships as an undergraduate, had an energy industry bursary, and did an international exchange program. This awesome panel is being moderated by Dr. Kate Helmstedt, who is Associate Professor of Mathematics at QUT. Kate's research uses maths to guide smart decision-making for our ecosystem management, so future management can be more cost-efficient, transparent, and defensible. So please join me in welcoming Kate to talk about STEM plus sustainability careers at QUT, and also help me welcome the extraordinary panel. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Yes, I'm Associate Professor Kate Helmstedt. It's great to see everyone here for QUT Sustainability Week and National Science Week. So our society is facing some really massive problems, and in my opinion, and probably in the opinion of many of you here, sustainability is one of those massive complex problems. Our human populations are growing very fast and very far, and what that means is we need more out of our environment. But at the exact same time, we're looking around us and seeing that something's not working. These systems are getting pushed beyond the brink of what we can expect to continue getting from the systems, while our demand is really growing. And so the question of sustainability really sits at the crux between those two things. How do we manage these systems? How do we understand our systems so we can continue in perpetuity for all of our future generations, continue our society, and continue the environment around us? And when we think about solving problems like this at QUT and in academia and in research and in science and STEM all around the world, we recognize that this is a place where we really need to develop innovative solutions to these problems. It's not just going to be one mathematician like me or one IT person or one scientist sitting alone solving these problems. It has to be this kind of collaborative adventure that we all go on to solve these problems. And so, for example, like at QUT in the Faculty of Science, we have various schools, and this is where you learn to be a mathematician, or you learn to be a scientist or an engineer or a IT professional. So we have schools like School of Mathematical Sciences, School of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences, biology and environmental sciences, computer sciences, IT, mathematics. I might have said that twice because that's my school. And that's where we learn the discipline stuff. That's where we learn the science and the tech and the technologies and the processes and the theories and the methods. But then what we do, and for example, again, in the Faculty of Science at QUT, is we step then into these collaborative environments. So at QUT, we have these faculty and university-wide centres that are focused on a problem. So for example, we have a Centre for the Waste-Free World, we have Centre for Agriculture and Bioeconomy, Centre for Water, Centre for the Environment, Centre for Data Science. And it's here where all of these different people from all of these different disciplines get together in this kind of like STEM+X type of idea, like we're all in it together. We get together and we try and tackle these massive problems that require such innovative solutions. And so I'm really excited to have our panel here today to talk about what it is to really need to drive innovation in this space and what it has meant for their careers in environment and sustainability. So thank you guys so much for coming. So, Erin, we're going to start with a question for you. So, you've had this really rich and diverse career in health and science, and you've worked kind of as an entrepreneur, but also in government. But what has been like the common thread of science throughout the work in sustainability that you've been doing?
I think, well, I did a PhD in biotechnology. And then from there, I really knew that I didn't really want to stay in the lab, that I wanted to go out and work in the industry. And so that was a real driver for me to go out, because I felt that I was interested in engaging and making an impact and having purpose. I was also very interested in working with other people, but in terms of out in the world doing that. And so I was also really wanting to make sure that my work I'd understand how products are delivered, how we develop things on a global scale as well. So early on in my career, after I graduated, I went and worked overseas for about 8 years, and then really wanted to be able to see, well, how do you take things the whole way through? And I think that's really been a driving force for me. I've ended up studying business, working in complex project management, which I taught at QUT for quite a number of years, worked in a digital startup as well, which was very much around how do you be agile and bring something to the market fast. I've always really enjoyed working in multidisciplinary teams and making an impact, which can sometimes be difficult in complex environments of trying to get various agendas across. We know that there's a lot of urgency in the moment, and it's always that pathway of purpose that's taken me through in my career, and now with Life Sciences Queensland as an advocate for the sector to ensure that we connect up the sector well, because I think a really collaborative sector works more effectively. That's always been really driving forces. A lot of that STEM, I'm probably very highly in the +X side of the STEM. I've really focused on a lot of those what are called soft skills and really lent into those. Yeah.
It's interesting that you talk about like that urgency driving the purpose, because I think we look around us in sustainability and think that the urgency is a bit terrifying. Like the urgency drives our terror as people who don't work in sustainability.
Yeah.
But do you think that has been like helpful in your career and in your work and in the things you've been doing?
Sometimes I have been overly fervent because I'm so passionate about something, and that probably actually turns people off. And that was, I can remember key times during my career or some kind of conversation or initiative that I wanted to get across the line, and to actually take the time to bring people with me was more important. And that's why I then focused on learning some of those complex project management and other kinds of collaborative skills, because I realized that, some of the things that brings people along is not just the facts. People are moved by their emotion, and they're moved by feeling included, and being the technical expert isn't always the best way to do that.
That actually creates an excellent segue, thank you, into our next panel member, Brett, who his X in the STEM+X is his work as a videographer, and he makes these incredible kind of videos and visualizations of coral reefs and kind of the beauty of a coral reef, but also maybe some of the destruction of the coral reef as well. And so, Brett, a big challenge that you have in your job is kind of keeping the general public coming along with you on this story without exhausting them or turning them off of the sustainability. And so I'm wondering if you could speak a bit about your work as in videography, but also that kind of that tightrope you have to balance.
Sure. Dr. Erin said it pretty good. You don't want to annoy anyone. And we actually had this discussion before, and just before this panel started. And basically, we came to the conclusion that you just don't want to push anyone to do something that they don't want to do. Everyone wants to make their own decisions, and the best way to do that is to make sure people are informed. If I create a pretty video, then that means that more people are engaging with that. So therefore, they are passively engaging with science and information and knowledge. And I'm not necessarily forcing them to make any decision in any way. That it does come down to, their morality and the information that they've garnered from those videos. So, for me, that's probably the best way to go about it, is to be a little bit more passive, actively passive, I would say, is the best way to do it. That's just my perspective, though. I'm sure there are other ways to engage, but that's just one.
And how do you balance this world of, this science communication, this videography that you're doing at the same time? Because you are a researcher here at QUT. So what is that? How does that job work?
I balance it terribly. I try to do the best that I can. I had this discussion just before the panel as well, is how bad I am at social media. I'd love to get much better, and this comes down to even broadening my skill set and those soft skills, and being able to collaborate with other people, those that are in those kind of areas of expertise. This is where I start to get better, and I try and go out and speak to multiple people in the digital realm and the artist realm. We've done art exhibits here at QUT. We've featured over at the Queensland Museum. Right now we have an exhibit, part of an exhibit at the National Museum in Canberra. It'll be there for the next 15 years. So this is how we do it, is I don't need to always do all the work. I produce media, and I produce something that is viable and tells a story and is, visually engaging to people. And that's what they do. They just engage with it, and it comes down to, when you were talking there, Erin, about the pathos, the ethos side of things. It is really important to engage with people's pathos, but too much of that, you'll push them away. You want to go ethos as well, because you want to come from a position of authority. But, and then there's logos, logic, and logic is boring. So you got to find a balance. So the video is logic, but it's a bit engaging, but it also, can be a bit heartwarming as well at times. So and it comes from a scientist, and it comes from a research background. So we kind of have a balance of all three.
It's so interesting in 2023. You don't meet many videographers that aren't just talking about TikTok.
Yeah, my fiance loves TikTok, and she's always on me to do something. No, I can't.
Is she doing a science TikTok or just dances?
No. She just scrolls.
Just like every good millennial.
She's just a scroller. Yeah.
Refuse to contribute, but
yeah, exactly.
Yes. And Saga, so you're an expert in agricultural biotechnology, which I think is understating it, but your face is suggesting that you're going to say that that's overstating it. But certainly, like, in the research that you do, and in your role with the Centre for Agriculture and Bioeconomy, you're really at this kind of forefront of developing these new tech that might help to solve some of these giant problems that are in front of us here. And it's really, it's such an important time for that, as we're dealing with the threat of climate change and food insecurity. So I'm wondering, right now, in that current climate in the world, what kind of jobs are you seeing coming up that we should be training our new generation, that we are, or that this generation might be thinking there's a spot for them in that world?
Thank you very much, Kate. And folks, it's a pleasure to be here. And just to share with you my passion for an area that I think has become increasingly the focus of the consumers and just you and I. If there's anything, COVID-19 has accelerated what we call provenance in the food supply chain, which means that suddenly we are paying more attention to where did this food actually come from? Who grew this? Was it grown sustainably? What are the additives that we have put into it? And this has lent and created many career opportunities. For example, if we just take a look at, to grow something successfully, we've got to be able to manage diseases, pests, and an important resource like water. And you're probably already aware that there's only 2.5% of the water found on Earth that's actually fresh, of which 70% of it is locked up in the Antarctic ice caps. So as such an invaluable resource, we need to use it quite delicately. And here you could see the water engineering component coming in that contributes towards the more sustainable production of some of the things that we consume almost on a day-to-day basis, leafy vegetables, tomatoes, etc. So it's not surprising that Health and Wellbeing Queensland recently looked at some lettuce leaves that rocked up on the shelves of our supermarkets, Coles and Woolies. How long did it take from the time it was grown, harvested, to the time that it actually reached the supermarket shelf? You'll be surprised to learn that 28 days. So from the time it was excised, that's how long it took to actually get there. So the whole idea around provenance is that we need to capture data. And we need to be able to use this data in a responsible manner that we could communicate it, so that you could actually scan a QR code and be able to know that Farmer Joe had actually grown this is when it was harvested, and this is now how it's ended up in our supply chain. But if you take a look at the career paths, for starters, we need to grow things successfully. In order to be able to grow it successfully, we need to use all the technologies and all the attributes in terms of disciplines to be able to ensure that our crops can survive this variability in climate change, whether it is just the high temperature, depleted soils of nourishment. And for that, we actually require a range of disciplines, from maths to just biological sciences, information technology, and importantly, chemistry and engineering. And in order for us to be able to do that, we need these minds to come together to be able to firstly grow something successfully. There are waste streams that emerge from this. How do we deal with those waste streams? And we could turn those waste streams into value-added products. A classical example is that many of us consume rice almost on a regular basis. Most of the rice husks and straw are so rich in silica that in parts of the world where it's grown, it's actually just burnt or it's buried in the ground and contributing to greenhouse gases. We have got researchers here at QUT that have taken that, produced graphanated carbon. These are chemists. And from that graphanated carbon, activated it to actually produce a supercapacitor. So now you're suddenly delving in the electrical engineering side to be able to take a waste stream to deliver such value. But guess what? There's a range of other applications. You could actually remove impurities from water and create drinkable water to the average person in areas where water we often take for granted. It's actually not drinkable because of all types of pollutants, whether it is salinity and whether it is other impurities from the environment. But amongst all of this here, what you could see is individuals from different disciplines coming together to create these solutions. Hence the whole circularity of all of this. And we as consumers play an important role in helping to guide where are those important areas that need to be addressed. We want to create a sustainable planet. We want to create sustainable practices. We want to ensure that the foods that we are consuming actually are delivering health benefits, not just we are consuming it for the sake of eating. And hence, there's also a much greater attention on, are there actual natural crops that are grown in Australia? Guess what? We've got an indigenous community that have been practicing agricultural practices and utilizing native fauna and flora for close to 60,000 years. Most of you are not aware that there's 4 species of rice that's actually native to Australia, used by our indigenous communities for that number of thousands of years. Do you see that on our supermarket shelves? No. We can help advance that and not just create economic opportunities for our communities, but to also take that and put it onto the global stage. So I think every one of us can play a role in this.
Thanks, Saga. Really exciting times for food and for technology. Now, Kate, you're a fairly recent QUT Science and Engineering graduate, and now you have this incredible job where you're working as a power systems engineer in the renewable energy sector. So you've really made this transition from learning about the problems in the world and how to solve them, and now you have this job that is incredible and is making this really big difference. And so I'm wondering, how did you get that role, and what's the thing you enjoy kind of most sitting there in that impactful job that you have?
Cool. So yeah, I graduated at the end of last year, and I've been working in my current role for about 6 months. So yeah, I actually got my job through a friend, a university friend. She had been working in Energy Queensland, and her former boss, who'd moved on to another company, was looking for some interns and graduates. So she recommended me, and I ended up getting an internship position at the company that I'm at now. So I did a 6-month internship, then came back to uni, finished my degree, and now I'm back there as a grad. So I think it's really cool how they often talk about when you're at uni that you need to network with professionals, build all these amazing relationships, which are great, and they are really important to do. But it's also important to network with the other students around you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have got my job. I would have never have met this person who became my boss if it hadn't been for another student. So I think it's also really inspirational that, yeah, that can happen. Another thing, Brett was actually my tutor.
I was.
In my first
I know, I saw it when we were coming up in the elevator. I'm like, is that one of my former students? Oh, that'll be nice. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm sharing a panel with us. It's just lovely at the same time. Absolutely lovely. I was embarrassed and I didn't say it, pick up on it immediately.
Yeah, I didn't even know you'd remember. So it was my first semester of uni. So yeah, back then I was really inspired by the work that Brett was doing, and it almost made me want to switch and go into choral and outside of the area that he's in now.
Really
so
nice.
Yeah, I think it's great that at university you're surrounded by all these amazing people that are going to have amazing careers. So make sure you keep those connections. In my job, I really enjoy, other than the technical things, I really enjoy that I get to do problem solving, work in coding, which when I started uni, was not a fan of, but now it's actually really fun, and you get to problem solve in ways that aren't just, I'll go look this up on GitHub or anything like that. Talk to other people, collaborate with them. But I also enjoy the fact that I know that I'm contributing to sustainability and making the energy space more carbon neutral. Yeah, it's just nice to know that I'm working in a field that I've always wanted to be in, and that I know that I am helping the future even in some tiny way.
Amazing. So when you're talking about your own carbon footprint, often they say one of the best things you can do is not have a child, right? Because in some ways their carbon footprint, then you have to take it on. So now, Brett, you get to take all credit for everything Kate does because he inspired her to go into a sustainability.
So that means I'm carbon neutral now. So I'm good.
Perfect. So now that we've met the panel and know a little bit more about their expertise and what they do, I will ask if there's any questions from in the room at the moment. We have a couple of microphones that we can bring along. And I am going to ask people to be a little bit bold in the types of questions that they have. Are there questions about the career that you might think you want to go into? Are there questions about how you can live your life differently? Are there questions about the types of work that these guys have spoken about?
Just a question for Brett. I was wondering how you mentioned that you don't want to be too pushy with people in your videos. I was wondering how you still make sure you get the message across that you want without being naggy and pushy.
Well, usually, and this is where my skill set ends, is I can build a beautiful video. I can create excellent microscopy that basically kind of tells part of the story, and then it is outsourcing that. So, I've filmed for the BBC, for example, right? It was them that went and created the story, if that makes sense. I just produced the media for them. And I pitched the idea, I pitched the story, this is what the message that we need to get out. But my skill set isn't broad enough to be able to achieve that. So they were able to come along and, integrate that into one of their documentaries that they did. Earth from Space. It's pretty fun. But it's that side of things. It's just making sure that I'm engaging with a broader community, because if you do that, and every panelist on here has basically mentioned how connecting and collaboration with broader networks is what gets you success, right? And that's the same with me. I still have to do research. I'm still that takes up a lot of my time. So having those extra people in my life and extra connections is how I get that extra success and make sure that story gets out. I like to think, I was saying to Erin, do not quote me on this, okay? But I grew up with David Attenborough, right? What he taught me about Earth and things like that is that I don't like watching gazelles get killed by lions, right? That's pretty much it. But I engaged on so many different levels with so many different environments, with so many different worlds, that it engaged my thought processes and allowed me to understand the world a little bit more broadly from my little country town. And if I can do a similar thing, not on that level, obviously he's a god tier, but if I can do a similar thing by providing similar media and allow other people to help me produce similar messaging, then that's the goal. Thank you.
Just from the David Attenborough thing, when I think about David Attenborough, he's maybe, filming a dung beetle or something, and I never normally think about a dung beetle, but the way he does it is to really demonstrate his care for the situation and what the subject that he's looking at. And I think the way that he brings both information but also care and just to that intensity of it, I think has transformed the communication space and invited people in to be interested in and feel that it's accessible for them. And he does that through his care for the subject.
Sorry, we'll just ask you to wait for the microphone just because of the people online. So if we can just grab a...
I was just about to say, the guy's been doing it for so long that he's able to go back and look at, say, the savannas of Africa 20, 30, 40 years ago and compare them to what's there now. I think that's a big strength of Edinburgh.
That's right, like he made people care about it, and then walked away for a bit and came back and showed that the thing you cared about is different. I think there's been very interesting messaging for the Great Barrier Reef through that same thing as well, like people who continue to return, and it's the heartbreak that you see for those people that I think has been really powerful SciComm messaging around sustainability.
Thank you. So I'm doing a double degree in environmental science and journalism. So I kind of want to be like a science communicator when I grow up. But I have a question for you, Kate. Since you did a double degree as well with science and engineering, and you did 4 internships, were the majority of yours like in engineering, or did you do like internships in science and internships in engineering?
Yeah, so I did do a double degree. I did all of my internships in engineering, unfortunately. I did try to get one in science because it was a consulting company that also did science, but it didn't end up working out. So yeah, they were all in engineering, but I did get to do a few different areas, and some of them on one of my internships, Energy Queensland, you know, the power poles you see around the place, they have to get them from somewhere. So they have a few different forests around Queensland where they grow power poles basically. So I got to go to one of their forests and learn about how they grow them, which was pretty cool. Yeah, so I got a sort of environmental part through my engineering. Yeah, does that answer your question? Cool.
And Kate, did you know from the beginning of that degree, that double degree, that you wanted to be in this kind of sustainability space, or did it just kind of grow and transpire over the time?
Yeah, so when I started my degree, I wasn't doing electrical engineering because I liked electrical engineering. I was doing it purely because I wanted to get into renewables. So yeah, I knew I wanted to go there. I was also really passionate about the environment, so I was open to ending up in that field rather than engineering. But yeah, I found that I really liked the work that I could do there.
So you have literally your dream job right now.
Yeah.
It's all downhill from here.
Yeah, very
That's
lucky.
amazing. Do we have any other questions from the audience at the moment? Yeah.
That'll be for Professor Mundry. I'm just wondering, what do you think, or how can data be useful in tackling food waste within the the household sector? Could it be like easily gathered from the consumer, or is it more? Could it be more like, I don't know? Just I'm just wondering also regarding behavioral aspects. Yeah.
Yep. Now you touch on a really significant point. This might be not common knowledge to most people, but in Australia, we roughly waste around 40% of the food along that supply chain, and for various reasons. One of the reasons is that I give you an example of where it took 28 days to get that lettuce leaves into the supermarket shelf. By the time it reaches our kitchens and fridges, it's probably going to last a day or two. So how can we disrupt that? One of it is, can't we grow them closer to where it's going to be consumed? Can't we purchase them in wholesome as a whole plant? Because the moment you excise something from the plant almost perceives that there's really no reason to live. And it biologically produces programmed cell death proteins that self-destructs. So nutritionally, you're probably better off, and I've said this in a few public forums, eating the package than the actual leaves. So how do we reduce that? And you're seeing this already occur in communities where you can actually start to grow some of the essential leafy vegetables that you may need. Or we could use protected cropping to grow them and to deliver them wholesome actually at the supermarket level. Okay? And the other key thing as well is, do we really purchase what we require? So I'm driving towards the concept of less is more. Okay, so that you really, if you just need, 4 citrus fruits for the week, should we be buying 10? Actually, buy the 4 and consume them. So I think you're going to find that there's going to be greater attention as we create an awareness of the waste and where the wastage occurs, a greater attention to actually changing behavior. And that's going to take, it's almost going to be a necessity more than anything else.
On the topic of less is more, I'm going to ask you something outside of your expertise. HelloFresh boxes. So they get delivered to my house. They're in individual packets, but it's only the amount that you need. Do you think that the packaging required to do that and ship it to my house offsets the food waste I would have done if I had have bought a whole lettuce and eaten 3 leaves?
I think what you're leaning towards is more precision foods, which means that, you know that this is what the calories that you require with the protein, carbohydrates, and micronutrients, etc., delivered to you. Certainly, it's going to reduce wastage, as compared to walking into a supermarket store and supermarket and then purchasing a whole range of this and actually disposing about a third or half of that. I think without a shadow of doubt, you're going to find those levels of precision, conciseness going to have environmental impacts. But then you've got to look at the mileage, the impact of it being delivered, the storage along the way. What is that footprint? So I think some techno-economic analyses or assessments of those supply chains will be important to inform the consumer, so that there's no yes say, but rather there's evidence.
How many years away do you think we are from, when you go to Macca's or whatever, and next to every hamburger there's the calories? How far away are we from really actually being able to tell people the carbon impacts or the biodiversity impacts or the water impacts of their food at that level?
I think there are enough incentives out there that it's going to accelerate the delivery of those technologies. There's already the tools are available, blockchain, etc. We are going to require the technology in terms of analysis of the material to be able to deliver. Okay. Often you buy these yogurts that have so-called probiotics in them. And again,
are you about to tell me that's bad?
Well, at the time of manufacturing, the probiotics are alive and well.
Yeah.
But often, because of the cold storage, the sugar content, by the time you get it, there's actually, I'm sorry to say, very little probiotics in there. And you are paying a premium price for it.
Big yogurt is lying to me.
Yeah.
And yet you're better off just purchasing a plain yogurt, a Greek yogurt.
My yogos are no longer...
Those are the kind of informative, sensible approaches that actually, as a consumer, we will start to ask more and more of these questions that will demand that level of provenance.
Yeah, I mean, knowledge is power, right? And if knowledge can promote people to do better things, then wouldn't it be great to share that information?
Hello, I have more of like a general question. Do you think there is, at government level, I can't remember who had some involvement with government previously. Erin. Oh yeah, sorry, Erin. I was wondering if perhaps like government levels and graduates could go into government levels and help with sustainability, like with maybe Queensland Parks, for example.
Yeah. No, that's a great question around what's the role for, as a graduate and with an interest in sustainability, to be able to work in government. There's certainly, whole departments or agencies within government to be able to do that kind of work. And I think it's a great place for graduates to be able to go, because one thing, government is so important for setting the policy groundwork from which, many decisions get made and that industry will follow. Actually, Sagar and I were just having a conversation around the need for government to have a consistent foundation of policy to be able to enable business to make certainty decisions. And with a scientific background, to be able to combine that, you'll have fascinating kinds of problems to be able to solve. And it does require that rigorous scientific understanding to then combine that, well, how are we going to, make policies that will make a difference to the environment, that will make a difference to people, animals. And so there's really fascinating jobs that you can do in science. And I know that the government does have graduate programs. And one of the other things that's great about working in government is the opportunity to work in different areas, because say you're really interested in sustainability, as you can hear, there's, sometimes there's certainly an interplay, sometimes a tension with what Treasury might be doing, for example, or what infrastructure is doing, and the ability to move from one area to another within government to be able to work at that systemic level, I think provides some really fascinating careers. And if that's something you're interested in, it's certainly an area to go for, because I think it would, one of the best things would be to have great science graduates working within government departments to be able to make informed decisions that would make society and sustainability definitely better.
I think it's a very interesting time for sustainability. So I'm a mathematician, and 10 years ago, our mathematics graduates thought the thinking was like, what maths company might I work for? Or can I work for like the maths department of one of these bigger companies? And about 10 years ago, there was a shift that was kind of like, oh, actually, every company kind of wants a data scientist. Every company wants someone who can talk about data, who knows about data, who can model and do these mathematical things. So we started seeing mathematicians embedded into just like normal companies that weren't focused on maths. And I feel like right now is that shift in sustainability, right? Of you don't have to necessarily only work for a renewable energy company or strive for that from day one of your career and study sustainability to then go into these jobs and have this massive sustainability impact.
Yes, definitely.
What an exciting time.
Oh, it is. I mean, the range of different kinds of careers that you can have, and I think that they're, I've always followed my passion, so to speak, and just seeing, well, what do I want to learn next? And I've moved in that direction, and then another door opens, but I could never imagine what those doors could have looked like, 10 years ago.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I have a question for the entire panel, so please jump in. Can one or two of you talk about the fashion industry and how that has a big role to play in sustainability or lack thereof?
In case anyone down that end didn't hear, it's a question about the fashion industry and the impact of, or the thought of sustainability in the fashion industry. Anybody willing to tackle that one?
No.
I can speak a little bit to it.
That's
you don't want
too big.
Shin to come for you.
Yeah. And I watch a lot of Project Runway, so I'm an expert. But I'll leave it up to others.
Yeah. I am a founder of a startup that we do some work, some digital development work, and I have worked with a fashion designer who wanted to deliver and develop more sustainable fashion, and actually I met her through running a program with QUT. She came over from Indonesia. So I have sort of delved in quite a bit into the fashion and sustainability area. I think that the whole drive, probably in the late 20th, early 21st century, of being able to deliver fast fashion had massive impacts to the environment. And we've probably seen that war on waste to see the amount of waste that's created through fashion is, health creates a lot of waste, fast fashion creates a lot of waste, food creates a lot of waste. But that drive of that constant, the new article of clothing, and particular companies that do that, the workforce that's surrounded that. So there's certainly the human sustainability aspects and ethics is very poor in areas of the fashion industry. They have been required through regulatory processes, and particularly the environmental social governance laws that are sweeping across a range of and regulations at a global level that are impacting, our areas in science, but also in fashion. But you do see certain fashion designers advocating for better fabrics, the use of hemp, etc., that looks at the the use of cotton compared to more sustainable fabrics so that they're not using as much water. There's the waste of fabrics. So this particular fashion designer, she came to us because she was interested in using our augmented reality technology so that people could be able to augment and put different sort of designs or motifs on their articles of clothing that would otherwise still be good, but people get bored with their fashion and so they throw it out. So some of the behaviours that humans have in terms of wanting the next thing or throwing out an article of clothing that's otherwise good but that doesn't excite them anymore are all factors that contribute to the sustainability of fashion or not. But that sometimes that interface between digital technologies and fashion production is really interesting as well. So the extended realities are really coming into that, playing an interesting place where you can almost try something on before you buy it, even if you're buying something online. Also helps to reduce waste, whether it's the mileage of sending something or that you can try to see what it looks like before you buy it, so you're less likely to throw it out and make a more informed choice of your purchase. Anyway, that's a few ideas about sustainability and where it's playing out for the consumer.
And just on that, you had, when you were mentioning how fast something travels. So recently I actually put together a merchandising line for the Australian Coral Reef Society for the 100-year anniversary. So the oldest organisation devoted to the science of coral reefs in the world. And I'm a counsellor on that. And part of that was to, we needed income so we can support students and things like that. So we wanted to redo a merchandise line. And that was actually one of the things that I found so hard, was finding something that was sustainable. But there would be products that were sustainable and available for me to print our stuff on, but then they would come from the US. So I'm getting them printed in the US and then transferred over here. How is that? Like, am I better off going with something that's polyester that's here in Australia, or am I better off going with something that's supposedly sustainably sourced, but from the US? And then I started down a rabbit hole and I couldn't make a decision. And, so we did the best that we could with that. But there's, just from a literal tried to do this myself perspective, there's really not too many options out there even now. So we definitely need it. So if there are people that are interested in that, you should definitely go into those areas.
Yes, definitely.
I think this is an area ripe for the picking. The footprint that cotton plantations leave across the world, very thirsty crops and drains the soils of essential nutrients, is quite devastating. I grew up in an era where I took care of my stuff because I knew I was passing it on to someone else. More than likely, I was handed down things myself. We've become a disposable society where we buy things, use it, and then let it go. I think that recycling of material, the separation of the synthetic fiber from the actual cotton itself, putting it back into production. There's already activities of this nature. I've been to plants in Indonesia, China, and India, where it's already occurring out of necessity. I think the consumer could play an important role in this. My two teenage daughters, for my last birthday, purchased 3 shirts for me, recycled cotton. 50% of it was plastic, from recycled plastic. And it also had artwork on it from an indigenous artist in Australia with a card indicating where this work was actually originated. And so that said to me, sent a very strong message that we are dealing with an era now where we will take pride in doing that. Not too long ago, we would not have considered that. So I think this is something that should be at the forefront of our thinking.
I noticed that for my daughter as well. She loves shopping in op shops, and I've always enjoyed vintage fashion, but a lot of the times when I was growing up, it was not really encouraged. And I think that that ability to have fashioned and things like that really helps with fashion. So all the trend, there's so many different ways that fashion can become more sustainable.
What's that pyramid the
needs pyramid.
yeah,
The
like
Maslow hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, is it the reuse? You've got
the reuse, recycle.
refuse, reuse. So avoidance, and then reuse. Then recycle is actually one of the worst things you can do.
Yeah.
So it is just avoidance and reuse, and that's basically what this discussion has been about.
Do we have any more questions from the audience? These have been incredible so far. Yeah.
This is a question maybe relating to sustainability, but it's to do with the foods and consumption. My question is, which I've always been curious about, in the future, do you see the pursuit of genetic modification of foods to make it more dense or faster growing, so you can expand where you can grow it? Or do you think it's more going in the direction of efficiency of production, so like vertical farming and so forth?
That's a very good question, actually. The horse has bolted on the genetic modification. In 2020, two female researchers from France and the US uncovered a new tool called genome editing, where you can change the letter in a word, like the letter D, from a word called had into has. That's how precise the technology has become, and to deliver largely more resilient crops, more nutritious, etc. But I think we need to look at transformation of traditional industries. A classical example is that we've got close to a $5 billion industry around sugar in Queensland. And we are seeing the consumer trends is in the opposite direction, is to stay away from sugar, reduce your sugar content. There's a $160 million program funded by the federal government with industries and universities, of which QUT is one of those partners, led by the University of Queensland, called FABA, which is really Food and Beverages Accelerator, where we are taking those sugars and actually are producing milk replacements through precision fermentation. So that's the new era that we are seeing, delivering much more precise nutritional profile foods. And we as consumers are now going to pay a bit more attention. You know what? I need more iron and zinc in my diet, actually. And guess what? I'm going to get this from there. Does the milk always have to come from a cow? Actually not. There are about 3 startups that are based in Brisbane, originated from Australia, that are already producing milk replacements. The other thing is that we grow these crops like chickpea, mung bean, fava bean in the tropical, subtropical climate of Queensland, put these into containers and had them shipped across the world for value addition and brought back into Australia. There's an opportunity for us to disrupt that and deliver healthier options because they are rich in plant proteins, rich in other micronutrients. So you're going to see those niche markets and opportunities emerging, but we're going to need the food technologists to do that. And you are the folks that are going to contribute to that.
Excellent answer.
This is kind of touching on that as well. I feel like we still sort of have a separation of where our food comes to the supermarket. Do you think we'll see more like vertical farms and urban farms, like in cities and stuff in the future? And like, when do you think that'll happen?
That's already starting to happen. Okay? So protected cropping, which is what we call it, because it might not be so evident, but actually about 50 to 60% of the office space in Brisbane is actually vacant. We could turn that into food production facilities by just bringing in the necessary lighting, utilizing the grey water from the buildings, and growing it using about 1/5 to 1/6 of the amount of water it takes to grow them on broad acre. You're already seeing this in many parts of the world, mainly driven by necessity. I think in Australia, it's going to be driven largely from consumer behavior, where you're going to say, I would like to see what sort of footprint are these foods actually leaving. Clearly, not everything can be grown under those conditions, but a lot of what we consume on a day-to-day basis, from the strawberries, tomatoes, leafy vegetables, can be grown there. And you're going to find more supermarkets are going to actually bring these into the stores that allows you to be able to go and pick things up and do that. There's many examples across Australia where that's already been demonstrated.
It's interesting when chefs get really involved in like the 100-mile movement and how that helps to, transform mindsets as well. I don't know what your experience would that be, Saga, if you've seen that impact through your own work.
Definitely. And I mean, I think what we are talking about here is the environmental footprint of whatever we consume. And that really, these are influences in society that help guide social behavior. And you probably may or may not be aware that, but QUT is leading the first ever Australian Research Council funded training center around behavioral economics. What are the consumer behaviors that are going to guide and dictate what we're going to end up on our supermarket shelves and what we're going to get into the supply chain? And I think that's a brilliant area to be in present.
I think we had another question down here. Oh, sorry, just here.
Just sort of playing off of the questions about food again, with the cost of living crisis, I know that food prices, especially fresh fruit and fresh vegetables, have been going up. What do you think the sustainability that you're doing, how would that impact the prices that we're seeing in Woolworths, Coles and at farmers markets?
That's a very good question. I'll be very blunt. There is a monopoly out there. You go to the farmers markets on a Saturday and Sunday and look at the price of things. When you talk to the farmer that grew those bananas and actually said that they harvested it the day before it comes out into those markets, whereas we know that the bananas you pick up on the supermarket shelf was actually harvested more than likely 18 months ago, kept in a refrigerator, and then when it's brought into the supermarket, given a blast of ethylene so that it looks nicely golden yellow. But when you consume that banana as compared to the farmer that grew it, very different. Okay, because you are of the way in which I think those types of concerns and behaviors raised by the consumers is going to be a game changer.
And maybe a similar question for you, Kate, like in the renewable energy market, we're all thinking about energy prices. Is there an implication for energy prices for the renewables? Is it good? Is it bad?
Yeah, so despite what a lot in the media are trying to say, it's definitely positive having more renewables in the market. The prices are already going significantly down from having renewables. It's just that there's a lot, in order to have a renewable future, we need to build a lot more of the network things like transmission lines, like you see like out in the forests and even the ones around here, like the smaller transmission lines, they're very expensive. So those kind of things are what's pushing up the energy prices at the moment, more so than the addition of renewables. So yeah, as we do transition, the energy prices are expected to go up for a bit, but then come back down. So I think just in general, across all areas of life, everything is quite expensive at the moment, but there is hope for the future in that sense. Yeah.
Unless we have, oh yes, just one more. I've got 2 minutes.
So what sort of programs or systems are in place to help us utilize like Indigenous knowledge to help with sustainability?
You go.
No, that's
up your alley.
Yeah, that's it.
I think we are just scratching the surface. There's huge opportunities. For starters, we've got to co-design. We've got to engage with our communities to be able to see where those gold nuggets and opportunities and be prepared to actually pick up those Indigenous knowledge systems and value it. I think we just don't have enough products on our supermarket shelves, enough exposure to be able to know what's out there. That's the first thing. We are fortunate in that Queensland is one of the few states and territories in Australia that has a Biodiscovery Act. I'm not too sure if you're aware of that. It's put into place last year that gives communities more assurance that when we are actually utilizing that Indigenous knowledge, ending up in products that are ending up on our shelves, those communities are going to benefit from this. And that we know where that Indigenous knowledge systems that are actually coming from. My team works a fair bit on native rice that I've talked about. We have also teamed up with a First Nations community in Manitoba in Canada. Guess what? They also have some species of rice that are grown, but they're several steps ahead of us. We are looking at how we could bring the flowers from both those to create rice cakes, what we call a solidarity blend, to develop products that we could put on our shelves. But again, it's First Nations and Indigenous communities working together. And guess what? In Vanuatu, there's a wide range of cocoa varieties that are grown. We could get the chocolate from there and develop a rice cake with chocolate from Vanuatu, but a solidarity blend from Australia and Canada. How about that? You know what I mean? So those are the kind of opportunities, and you've got to get right into it. And you are the future entrepreneurs in any event that could make this possible.
I think that's a beautiful way to end. And I think that what we've heard from our panel is that there are so many opportunities and solutions here. They're only achievable if we kind of work all together in all of this collaborative environment. No one person holds the answer and no one person wants to hold the answer because it's a team problem. So let's just thank Erin, Brett, Saga, and Kate one more time for their
That's excellent. Thank you, Kate, and thank you, panel. I loved where that went. It started with careers to creative communications to how we can contribute, how our STEM graduates and future innovators can contribute, but also how we as consumers can help look at that problem. So thank you for that. But also, round of applause for the audience. Your questions were amazing. I loved all the different places you were interested in. We really look forward to seeing where this will go with your careers. I just want to say thank you for joining us. If you had a good time today, there's another discussion on tomorrow. So tomorrow you can register to hear from Dr. Rebecca Huntley, who will be doing a keynote on how to talk about climate change in a way that makes a difference. So the QR code is there and also out the front. I'd like to thank you for coming along. If you also want to find out a little bit more about the STEM+X narrative, you'll see this at the front, where you'll see Kate as one of our cover stars, and she also has a story in there as well. So you can pick one of those up as you leave, and do subscribe to careerswithstem.com newsletter to get more inspiration about various STEM careers. You can search by your X on the website, and sustainability is one of the X's. So you can kind of catalogue all the different stories and profiles by your area of interest. So thank you again for joining us today. It's been great to speak to you all. Thank you to our panel, and enjoy Sustainability Week.
So I'd just like to say to everyone that's in the audience, if these are areas that you are interested in going into, whether or not it is science communication journalism, whether or not it is